The greatest season of all assembling to journey and purify their souls. لبيك اللهم لبيك.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, all praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we continue in the days of Dhul Hijjah and we are able to remind ourselves of His beautiful deen, and at the same time we are becoming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the key lessons that we find within the history of Hajj, and that's something we have been discussing for the last few days, and the key lesson is sabr. Sabr is such that it goes hand in hand with the pilgrimage or the pillar of Hajj. At the same time, sabr is such that it's actually something that we find in all the ibadats. Many scholars, when they speak about sabr, they usually split sabr up into three. Number one is to do sabr with ourselves so that we don't become lazy to do good deeds. Number two is when we do sabr against bad deeds. And number three is doing sabr at the time when things are difficult. Many of us, unfortunately, we tend to think that sabr is only when things are difficult. When, for example, somebody passes away, that we be mindful of what we say, and that is the only form of sabr. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has given huge amount of reward for the people who are sabirun. So similarly, He will give us many ways where we can attain and become the people of sabr. In one place in the Quran, in Surah Al-Zumar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that indeed the patient will be given their reward without any account. There's also many other hadith, many other Quran ayats, many other sayings of Sahaba radiyallahu anhum ajma'in, which teaches us that the people of sabr are going to be successful. Allah, even in one place in the Quran, He says, Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin, that indeed Allah is with those who are patient. So what is the actual connection between sabr and between Dhul Hijjah? The truth is that sabr is actually, like I said before, can be found in every element, every worship, every part of this deen. But in particular, the way that we find it in Dhul Hijjah, it's in a few ways. Number one is for those people who are going to Hajj. Hajj is actually very, strainful on the body. It can be very difficult financially. It could be saying goodbye to people for a few days, few weeks, that we normally live every single day with. If you ask the father how their Hajj went, they're always thinking about their children. If you ask the child, they're always thinking about their parents. If you ask the husband, thinking about the wife. And if the wife happens to go to Hajj with other family members except for the husband, then they're always thinking about their husband. Now this is one element where they are, or they should be, patient. Another time you go and it's very difficult to walk certain parts of Mina, Muzdalifah, Arafah. It gets very difficult. You have to stay up at night. The sleeping pattern is different. For those people, there's very crowded places, and it becomes very difficult for us to perform the pilgrimage of Hajj. However, a Muslim sees themselves going through this through sabr, and they learn sabr, they practice sabr, and they implement sabr. And it's so beautiful, actually, when we are there, that we see so many people, that normally they would not have any sabr. They're able to practice this in Hajj. Another time where we see a sabr outside the people of Hajj, we go all the way back to home. We see people in the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, they are preparing for Qurbani. They are giving up some of their wealth for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that they can purchase some animal, and that animal can be sacrificed for the sake of Allah. We see others that in these days they are fasting. We see others that in these days they are praying more. We see others that in these days they are giving more charity. Nevertheless, whatever the action might be, we see that many people are involved in these things by practicing sabr. So when you look at both people, the people who are going to Hajj and the people who are staying behind, you tend to start understanding that there is a benefit of patience that we find within the month of Dhul Hijjah. So that begs the question, what is sabr? So it really, a time when we are so involved in such an action, it's only fair that we revisit, reponder, and ask ourselves, what is the definition of sabr? And what is it that I can do in my life today, tomorrow, and every other day that I'm living to become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this beautiful action of sabr. So sabr in general, it means to stop yourself. Sabr means to stop yourself. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions the word sabr in the Quran in various different scenarios. So there isn't any particular place where only sabr should be done. However, there's a hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "As-sabru inda sadmatil ula," that a sabr or being patient is at the first instance. So that goes to show that sabr is actually that which we practice immediately at a time when we might act otherwise. So it matters about sabr is a proof that, or how do we prove our sabr? It would in other words be that if I'm about to think otherwise, if I'm about to act otherwise, if I'm about to sin, if I'm about to not obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I do immediately, instead of being in that laziness, instead of being overcome by waswasa, then this is me acting upon sabr. And for that person who's acting upon this level of sabr, for this person, there is a great reward. Unfortunate today that nowadays we claim to be patient, but we're quite the opposite. So we say, I should be patient, or I just became patient, or I've been patient, right? So we're always saying things like that, but then we make a comment afterwards. Now this is not sabr, because sabr is such that if a person was to see you, they can't even tell that you've been through some sort of a problem. Sabr is such that you don't complain about it either. Now there is a fine line between genuine complaint versus sabr, and we shouldn't cloud everything as sabr and say that there isn't any space for complaint in Islam. There is, but there's procedures for these things. Rather than that, we should, in every other instance, we should be patient. One of the scholars, they give a very beautiful definition of sabr. And they say it is to get on with what you're supposed to be doing at the time when it's the hardest to do so. So it is to get on with whatever you're supposed to be doing at the time when it is the hardest to do so. And that's the definition of sabr. So for example, if somebody in our family passes away, we need to pick ourselves back together, and we need to carry on praying, we need to carry on fasting, we need to carry on giving sadaqah, we need to carry on working and fulfilling our responsibilities. And a person can do that, then this person has acted or has fulfilled sabr. But if a person on the other hand just sits there, yes, he doesn't say anything, yes, he's very quiet, yes, he's sitting in the corner, yes, he's sad. So even though he's not doing other things, even though he's not complaining, is that the true definition of sabr? No. So if you look at the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in every instance, he always carried on with what he was supposed to be doing. And what was he supposed to be doing? Calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So every single time he kept on calling people to Allah, even though his wife passed away, his uncles passed away, right? His children passed away. So many places where he could have given up but he carried on with what he was supposed to do. And this is a definition of sabr, because sabr proves that you have faith in Allah. Sabr proves that the loss of this world is not a real loss. So this is why we want to re-ponder, rethink about what sabr means to us in our life. And this is why it's so important that in the month of Dhul Hijjah, it's not just a time of doing actions, it's also a time of reflection. We need to do muraqabah wal muhasabah, which is that we go and contemplate about our life and we start taking account of the things that we do and don't do. So inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all the actions that we are doing in the month of Dhul Hijjah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring us the day of Arafah so that we can pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with all our du'as and they all be accepted. Ameen. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.